In the shadows of Carl Jung's vast intellectual legacy lies a revelation so profound that it remained hidden from public view. A mysterious, ancient manuscript describing in precise detail what happens to human consciousness during the first 72 hours after death. This isn't mere speculation or religious doctrine, but a meticulously documented account that shocked even Jung himself, challenging everything he thought he understood about the human psyche and its journey beyond physical existence. The knowledge contained within these forgotten pages offers a glimpse into realms of consciousness that modern science has barely begun to acknowledge, revealing sophisticated metaphysical technologies once understood by ancient civilizations across the globe. What makes this discovery particularly explosive is how it systematically dismantles conventional narratives about death while revealing the extraordinary potential lying dormant within human consciousness. The manuscript doesn't just describe afterlife states, it provides precise techniques for navigating them consciously. Methods that Jung discovered could be applied during life to access expanded awareness and activate latent human capacities. These forbidden teachings were deliberately suppressed throughout history by institutions that recognized how this knowledge could free humanity from systems of control based on fear of death and divine judgment, revealing instead the natural laws of consciousness that govern our spiritual evolution. The journey described within these pages isn't what any religion has fully prepared us for. It's simultaneously more profound and more natural than conventional afterlife narratives suggest. The text reveals how during these critical 72 hours, the soul undergoes specific frequency shifts that determine its subsequent experience, navigating energetic gateways between dimensions while processing the accumulated patterns of its earthly existence. Jung connected these descriptions to his work on psychological integration, recognizing that the challenges faced during this transition mirror the very process of individuation he observed in his patients, suggesting that spiritual evolution continues seamlessly from embodied existence into the afterlife journey. As we explore the contents of this remarkable document, prepare to confront revelations that may challenge your deepest beliefs while awakening recognition of truths your soul has always known. From the specific stages of consciousness expansion that unfold during each 24-hour period, to the metaphysical technologies that allow for navigation between dimensions, this lost knowledge represents humanity's birthright, an understanding of our multidimensional nature that transcends religious boundaries, while fulfilling the essential promise at the heart of all spiritual traditions. That consciousness is not extinguished by death, but transformed into something far more extraordinary than most dare to imagine. Deep within the archives of Carl Jung's private collection, a remarkable document was discovered that few have ever laid eyes upon. This ancient manuscript, known only to a select circle of Jung's closest confidants, contains detailed descriptions of what happens to the soul during the crucial first 72 hours after physical death. Jung spent decades studying this forbidden text, meticulously translating its contents while comparing its revelations to the dream experiences of his patients who had near-death encounters. What makes this document particularly extraordinary is its origin, predating many known spiritual texts, yet containing wisdom that resonates across multiple ancient traditions. The manuscript describes specific energy frequencies that the soul encounters as it transitions between dimensions, revealing how our consciousness navigates through what Jung called the intermediate realm. This forbidden knowledge was deliberately kept from public view, as Jung believed humanity wasn't prepared for its profound implications about the nature of reality and consciousness. The text describes how during the first 24 hours after death, the soul experiences a complete life review, but not in the way most modern accounts suggest. According to this ancient wisdom, the soul doesn't merely witness its past actions, but actually experiences a quantum resonance with all consciousness it ever influenced. This creates what the manuscript calls the mirror of divine reflection, where the soul perceives itself through the cosmic energy flow of all other beings it touched during physical existence, revealing hidden truths about its spiritual evolution. What's particularly fascinating is how Jung connected this ancient knowledge to his work on archetypes and the collective unconscious, seeing in these descriptions the universal patterns that govern not just our living existence, but our spiritual transformation beyond physical death. The manuscript details specific vibrational states that allow the soul to access higher dimensions of consciousness, techniques for navigating spiritual portals, and methods for maintaining awareness through the transition that Jung believed could revolutionize our understanding of human potential and spiritual awakening, if properly understood and applied. According to the lost manuscript discovered by Jung, the initial 24 hours after death represent the most critical phase of the soul's journey. During this period, the consciousness experiences what ancient alchemists called the Great Separation, a profound detachment from physical identity and material attachments. Jung noted striking similarities between this process and the psychological individuation he observed in his patients, suggesting that death merely accelerates a spiritual transformation that begins during life through shadow work and integration of the unconscious. The text describes how the soul initially remains tethered to its physical body through etheric cords of energy that gradually dissolve over the first 6 hours. During this time, many souls experience confusion as they witness their own death scene from above, often trying unsuccessfully to communicate with grieving loved ones. Jung was particularly fascinated by how the manuscript detailed specific energy frequencies that the departing consciousness encounters, vibrations that create what he later termed psychoid fields, where thoughts manifest as tangible experiences in this intermediate dimension. What shocked Jung most profoundly was the manuscript's description of the cosmic mirror that appears approximately 12 hours after death. This metaphysical phenomenon presents the soul with reflections of its unresolved emotional patterns and hidden aspects of its psyche. Unlike the life review commonly described in near-death experiences, this mirror reveals not just past actions, but the underlying energetic imprints and karmic patterns that shaped one's entire existence. The soul witnesses how these vibrational patterns influenced not only its own journey, but created ripple effects throughout the fabric of collective consciousness. By the end of the first day, the soul begins to recognize its true energetic signature, beyond all earthly identities and roles it once played. The manuscript describes this as the Great Remembering, a profound recognition of one's multidimensional nature and connection to universal consciousness. Jung connected this phase to his concept of the self-archetype, seeing in these descriptions the ultimate realization of wholeness that humans unconsciously seek throughout their lives. This awakening process opens gateways to higher frequencies of being that allow the soul to navigate into the second phase of its afterlife journey. The manuscript reveals that during the second 24-hour period, the soul enters what ancient mystics called the Hall of Divine Resonance. Unlike conventional religious notions of judgment, this isn't a tribunal where external deities impose punishment or reward. Rather, it's an energetic realm where the soul naturally gravitates toward vibrational frequencies that match its own spiritual development. Jung noted how this concept perfectly aligned with his theories on psychological projection, suggesting that what we experience after death is ultimately shaped by the inner landscape we've cultivated during life, through our thoughts, intentions, and actions. In this phase, the soul encounters what the text describes as consciousness architects, interdimensional beings whose purpose is to guide rather than judge. These entities, which Jung later connected to his concept of archetypes, appear differently to each soul based on its cultural programming and spiritual understanding. For some, they manifest as ancestral guides. For others, they appear as light, beings, or even geometric patterns of sacred energy. Their function is to help the soul perceive its own energetic imbalances and provide opportunities for alchemical transformation through the visualization of alternative choices and paths not taken. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of the manuscript involves what it calls the viewing of parallel existences. During this period, the soul glimpses versions of its journey that might have unfolded had different choices been made at critical junctures. This isn't meant to induce regret, but rather to reveal the quantum nature of consciousness and how specific decision points created energetic momentum in certain directions. Jung was fascinated by how this ancient text described concepts that anticipated modern quantum physics, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of reality that transcended its historical context and offered profound insights into the nature of time, choice, and spiritual evolution. By the conclusion of this second day, the soul has fully detached from its former identity and begins to perceive reality through what the manuscript calls the eyes of essence. This expanded awareness allows it to see how each life experience, whether judged as positive or negative during physical existence, served as catalyst for growth. The document describes specific frequencies that the soul learns to navigate during this phase, each corresponding to different aspects of consciousness development and spiritual liberation. These frequencies serve as pathways to the next critical phase of the afterlife journey, where the most profound transformation occurs. During the final 24 hours of this critical transitional period, the soul undergoes what the manuscript calls vibrational recalibration, a profound energetic restructuring that determines its trajectory in the spiritual realms. Jung was particularly intrigued by the text's detailed description of how emotional patterns and thought forms from the previous life are transmuted into pure creative potential. This process involves the soul moving through 7 distinct frequency bands, each dissolving specific attachments, while simultaneously activating dormant aspects of higher consciousness that remained unexpressed during physical existence. The text reveals that approximately 50 hours after death, the soul experiences the cosmic seed moment, a profound encounter with what Jung later recognized as the universal archetypes of creation. During this phase, the soul resonates with specific geometric patterns of sacred energy that contain the blueprint for all manifestation. According to the manuscript, this is when the soul begins to form energetic intentions that will eventually shape its future experiences, whether in non-physical dimensions or in preparation for another incarnation. Jung observed striking similarities between these descriptions and the mandala spontaneously created by his patients during psychological integration processes. What most spiritual traditions have misunderstood, according to this ancient text, is the nature of choice available to the soul at this juncture. Rather than being assigned a destination based on earthly behavior, the soul naturally gravitates toward realms that match its vibrational signature. The manuscript describes specific techniques for maintaining consciousness through this transition, methods for navigating the quantum decision points that determine whether one remains in the intermediate dimensions for further healing, ascends to higher realms of non-physical existence, or begins preparation for another physical incarnation through resonance with potential future timelines. By the completion of these 72 hours, the soul has undergone a complete energetic transformation and stands at the threshold of vastly expanded possibilities. The text describes how the consciousness now exists in a state of divine resonance, where it perceives reality through the lens of universal awareness rather than individual identity. Jung theorized that this ancient knowledge was deliberately suppressed throughout history because it revealed the true nature of human potential beyond religious control systems. Those who fully comprehend these metaphysical processes gain access to what the manuscript calls the technology of consciousness, the ability to navigate multidimensional reality with awareness and intention rather than being unconsciously propelled by karmic patterns. What few scholars acknowledge is that Jung maintained a secret research group dedicated to studying death transition phenomena, separate from his public work on analytical psychology. This inner circle included individuals who had experienced clinical death and returned with vivid accounts that corroborated the manuscript's descriptions. Jung documented these sessions meticulously, creating a hidden archive of testimonies that he deemed too controversial for public disclosure. These records contain detailed accounts of consciousness expansion during near-death experiences that precisely matched the energetic phases described in the ancient text, convincing Jung that the manuscript contained authentic insight into metaphysical reality. The consequences of this hidden research profoundly transformed Jung's later theoretical work, though he deliberately obscured these influences in his published writings. When questioned about the afterlife by students or colleagues, Jung would often respond with carefully crafted ambiguities, while privately expressing absolute certainty about consciousness survival based on his forbidden research. The manuscript became his most treasured possession, kept secure in a specially designed vault with instructions that it should remain sealed until humanity reached sufficient spiritual maturity to receive its teachings without misusing the power of its revelations. About energy, manipulation and consciousness control. Jung's private journals reveal his growing concern that powerful institutions were actively suppressing similar knowledge throughout history. He documented systematic patterns of knowledge restriction by comparing destruction events of ancient libraries and mystery schools across different civilizations. Jung became convinced that certain power structures deliberately limited humanity's understanding of consciousness potential to maintain control. Systems based on fear, particularly fear of death and divine punishment. This realization led him to encode aspects of the manuscript's teachings within his published theories on archetypes and the collective unconscious, hiding profound spiritual truths within acceptable psychological frameworks. What troubled Jung most deeply was his discovery that certain aspects of the manuscript describe specific techniques for maintaining consciousness through the death transition, methods that could potentially be applied during life to access expanded states of awareness. He recognized these as the original source of many esoteric practices that had been fragmented and diluted over millennia across various spiritual traditions. The manuscript contained what Jung called the unified field theory of consciousness. The missing links that connected seemingly disparate mystical practices into a comprehensive system for spiritual liberation. This knowledge, Jung believed, represented humanity's birthright that had been deliberately fractured to prevent widespread access to the true nature of reality and human potential. The manuscript, Jung discovered, wasn't merely philosophical. It contained precise instructions for what can only be described as advanced consciousness technology. These weren't primitive rituals, but sophisticated metaphysical techniques based on a profound understanding of quantum consciousness that modern science is only beginning to approach. The text detailed specific sound frequencies, geometric visualizations, and breath patterns designed to activate what it called the vibrational gateways between dimensions. Jung was astonished to find that when these techniques were tested under controlled conditions, subjects consistently reported expanded awareness and access to information they couldn't have obtained through ordinary perception. What particularly fascinated Jung was the manuscript's detailed mapping of energy centers in the subtle body that functioned as interdimensional portals when properly activated. These weren't simply the chakras known to Eastern traditions, but a more complex system of nested vortices that created what the text called the geometric scaffold of consciousness. The document included precise mathematical ratios and sacred geometry patterns that, when internalized through specific meditation techniques, facilitated conscious navigation between different planes of existence. Jung recognized fragments of this knowledge in various esoteric traditions worldwide, but noted how they represented merely scattered pieces of this comprehensive system. The ancient civilization that produced this knowledge understood that consciousness itself is a form of technology, perhaps the most sophisticated technology possible. They had mapped the electromagnetic properties of thought forms and discovered how specific mental configurations could interact directly with the quantum field to manipulate reality. The manuscript contained what Jung called the mathematics of intention, precise formulas for generating specific energy frequencies through focused consciousness that could influence physical matter, access information non-locally, and even restructure the vibrational patterns that determine our experience of reality after death. These techniques weren't considered supernatural by their originators, but rather represented a sophisticated science of consciousness. What ultimately convinced Jung of the manuscript's authenticity was the discovery of corresponding symbols carved into ancient megalithic structures across multiple continents. These geometric patterns, when analyzed mathematically, contained the same precise ratios described in the text as keys to interdimensional access. Jung documented these correlations extensively, but kept his findings private, recognizing their explosive implications for conventional archaeology and religious doctrine. The text suggested that humanity once possessed a unified global understanding of consciousness technology that allowed for both physical and spiritual advancement far beyond what modern civilization has achieved. This knowledge wasn't lost by accident, but was systematically suppressed during specific historical periods that the manuscript identified with uncanny precision. According to the ancient text, what we experience as physical reality is actually a dynamic energetic construct that the manuscript calls the frequency matrix. This sophisticated system functions as both a training ground and testing environment for consciousness development. Jung was struck by how the document described, with mathematical precision, the way thought forms interact with this field to generate our perception of material existence. The text explained that during the first 72 hours after death, the soul gradually perceives the true nature of this matrix as its sensory processing shifts from physical instruments to direct energetic perception, revealing layers of reality that remain invisible during embodied existence. The manuscript contained detailed information about what it termed consciousness traps, energetic constructs that can entangle the soul after death if it remains fixated on limiting beliefs and attachments. These aren't punishment mechanisms, but natural consequences of the soul's own vibrational signature and unresolved patterns. Jung noted striking parallels between these descriptions and the psychological complexes he observed in his patients, suggesting that the same unconscious patterns that create suffering during life can continue to limit consciousness expansion after death. The text offered specific vibrational practices for recognizing and dissolving these patterns, techniques for what it called quantum disentanglement from limiting belief systems. What truly revolutionized Jung's understanding was the manuscript's explanation of how souls can become trapped in recursive loops between lives if they fail to integrate certain lessons. The document described specific energy signatures associated with unresolved trauma and how these create what it called harmonic resonance patterns that automatically attract similar experiences across multiple incarnations. This wasn't presented as punishment, but as a natural property of consciousness seeking completion through experience. The text offered precise methods for breaking these cycles through what it termed vibrational sovereignty, the ability to consciously direct one's energy frequency rather than being unconsciously drawn into predetermined patterns. The ultimate revelation of the manuscript, which Jung kept most closely guarded, was its detailed description of complete liberation from the reincarnation cycle. The text explained that the death transition offers a unique opportunity to fully awaken to multidimensional existence if the soul can maintain conscious awareness through specific frequency shifts. This process, which the manuscript called the Great Liberation, involves the dissolution of all identity constructs while retaining individuated consciousness, a paradoxical state that transcends the apparent dichotomy between unity and individuality. Jung recognized in these descriptions the ultimate goal that all authentic spiritual traditions gesture toward, though often through veiled symbolism that protected this knowledge from those who would suppress or misuse it. The most revolutionary aspect of the manuscript wasn't its description of afterlife states, but its assertion that these same dimensions can be consciously accessed during physical life through specific practices. The text detailed precise techniques for what it called frequency attunement, methods for shifting one's energetic signature to resonate with higher dimensional awareness while still embodied. Jung experimented with these practices privately and documented profound experiences of expanded consciousness, including direct perception of the subtle energy architecture underlying physical reality and access to what he described as the informational field of universal knowledge, experiences that profoundly influenced his theories on synchronicity and the collective unconscious. According to the manuscript, dreams represent natural gateway states where consciousness partially detaches from physical limitation and can access these intermediate dimensions more directly. The text offered specific visualization practices to be performed during the hypnagogic state, the threshold between wakefulness and sleep, that could transform ordinary dreams into conscious explorations of the same realms encountered after death. Jung found that patients who practiced these techniques reported remarkable experiences of psycho-spiritual integration, including spontaneous resolution of deeply rooted traumas and access to creative insights that transcended their normal cognitive capacities, suggesting these methods activated dormant potentials within human consciousness. The document emphasized that conscious preparation for death represented the most profound spiritual practice possible during physical existence. It detailed specific meditation techniques focused on dissolving attachment to identity constructs while maintaining awareness, precisely the challenges faced during the death transition. Jung noted that individuals who practiced these methods not only reported diminished fear of death, but demonstrated remarkable psychological integration and creative output in their daily lives. The manuscript suggested that by rehearsing the consciousness shifts required during the death process, one could essentially pre-process the most challenging aspects of the transition while still embodied, ensuring greater awareness and intentionality during the actual journey. What ultimately convinced Jung of this knowledge's transformative potential was observing how individuals who applied these practices underwent profound personality restructuring that aligned with his concept of individuation. These weren't merely psychological changes, but fundamental shifts in how they perceived and interacted with reality. Jung documented cases where practitioners developed heightened intuitive capacities, accelerated healing abilities, and remarkable, creative breakthroughs across various disciplines. The manuscript had predicted exactly these outcomes, describing them as natural expressions of expanded consciousness when the veils between dimensions are thinned through specific vibrational practices. This validated Jung's growing conviction that the document contained authentic wisdom that could revolutionize human understanding of consciousness potential. The remarkable journey outlined in this lost manuscript, discovered by Carl Jung, reveals a profound truth about human existence that transcends our conventional understanding of life and death. These ancient teachings show us that what we experience as physical reality is merely one expression of consciousness within a vast, multidimensional framework. The first 72 hours after death represent not an end, but a critical transition where we have the opportunity to fully awaken to our true nature, beyond the limitations of physical identity and cultural programming. This knowledge doesn't belong to any single tradition, but represents a universal science of consciousness that has been fragmented and hidden throughout human history. Perhaps the most empowering aspect of these revelations is that we don't need to wait for death to begin this journey of awakening. The same energetic gateways described in the manuscript can be accessed through specific practices during physical life, allowing us to develop greater awareness and intentionality for the ultimate transition while experiencing expanded states of consciousness in our daily existence. By understanding the vibrational nature of reality and learning to consciously navigate the frequency dimensions described in this ancient text, we can break free from limiting patterns and access the dormant potential that lies within each of us, the ability to perceive and interact with reality beyond the constraints of ordinary perception. What Jung ultimately recognized in this forgotten wisdom was the missing piece in humanity's understanding of itself, the bridge between psychology and spirituality that reveals our existence as fundamentally multidimensional beings, temporarily experiencing physical reality for the purpose of consciousness evolution. The manuscript describes not just what happens after death, but illuminates the very purpose of existence, the development of awareness that transcends all boundaries while retaining the unique perspective that each soul brings to the infinite expression of universal consciousness. This knowledge has been systematically suppressed, not because it's dangerous, but because it's liberating in the most profound sense possible. I invite you to consider how this ancient wisdom might transform your own relationship with life and death. Which aspects of these revelations resonated most deeply with your intuitive knowing? What patterns in your own existence might be transformed by understanding the energetic principles that govern consciousness across all dimensions of being. Subscribe to our channel for more explorations of forbidden knowledge and ancient wisdom that can awaken your highest potential. And don't miss our next video appearing on screen now, where we'll explore Jung's discoveries about accessing alternate dimensions through the dream state and how these practices can accelerate your spiritual evolution. Your journey through this material is just beginning, and the transformation it offers is limited only by your willingness to expand beyond conventional understanding.